Welcome to Ag Insights. I'm Andrew McCrae. It's estimated that about 31% of farmland is owned by non-operating landowners. Those owners have many things to think about when it comes to managing a farm and also passing those assets from one generation to the next. Joining me is Steve Hamilton and Michelle Upaw, and they are brother and sister here farming just outside of Ferguson, Iowa. Take me back. Where does this farm begin? Because this goes back many decades here.
Yeah, I think we figured out that my grandfather bought it about 1936. We are now the third generation that's involved in the farm. I'm the off-farm heir, and Michelle and Trent, her husband, are the ones actually farming it at this point in time.
So did either one of you think that you would be living and working on the farm at some point?
No, I said I wasn't going to marry a farmer.
And she didn't marry a farmer.
I didn't, but he is now.
Along the way, there were many different events that happened.
Yes.
You know, Steve, you mentioned that you weren't planning to come back to the farm, but take me through the events that lead up to eventually this farm then passing from one generation to the next.
We had a brother, and he was about 3 years younger than me, who was going to take over the farm. In fact, was farming with my dad, but at the age of 20, he had an unfortunate tractor accident.
We never know what life's going to throw at us.
No.
When you lost your brother, had there been much thought given to how this farm was going to be passed down from one generation to the next? And then what began to happen, the conversations that you had?
Probably not, because it wasn't planned. I guess I'm not sure what Dad's intentions were going to be.
That really kind of disrupted kind of where we thought things were going at that point in time. I have a lot of attachment to the farm because I grew up on it, worked on it, but I just wasn't going to be a farmer. That just was not in my makeup. I didn't want to see the farm go somewhere else. There was a lot of uncertainty, but then when Trent came into the picture and my dad and him started farming together, it started kind of working out because we saw that there was going to be a future, somebody else that could step in and take over for the next generation.
Michelle, what's it look like from your position being here on the farm then as far as the transition goes?
You know, transition-wise, things have been smooth, but there's always, questions. It's a matter of how do we weigh all these options and trying to find the right path to go down that it's not going to cause disruption in the family, hopefully keep the farm still intact.
I know that the life insurance and the long-term care insurance were important parts of the planning process. Talk about that. How did you work through that, and why is that so important for other landowners to think about?
When my dad passed away, because we had actually pre-planned the funeral stuff and had the trust in place and then had the money there, the financial resources there, nothing had to change. We didn't have to make any changes or disruptions to the operation. Then the management side of it, Dad fortunately had been turning over a lot of the decision-making to Trent. And my dad was kind of stepping back and being retired, as they say in the family business. Really, Trent became the person who was managing it.
Would you say without those two things, would the future of this farm been in jeopardy if you wouldn't have had those policies?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not sure without the long-term care policy where we would be.
What role has Nationwide played?
They're utilizing a lot of the things that I found, and they're helping other people do the same thing. And I also see on my end of it, working for Nationwide, I get a lot of calls from people who have said, well, Mom and Dad didn't want this to happen, or that isn't what they told me that was going to happen. And so clearly they didn't have things set up the way they wanted. And in our Land Your Legacy program, we will not draft legal documents, but the idea is that once you kind of go through the process of answering the tough questions, putting down the information, when you walk into an attorney and you have this, you're going to start at a much higher level in your planning process. And the attorney's going to know a lot more. So a lot of the stuff that I've learned and other people have taught me is really in this booklet here. And part of it, what it does is kind of help you go through some of the questions that people should be asking themselves, the families, and also then the fact-finding aspect of it, but a place to help keep things organized. That's what I've tried to do, is put everything in one place, because organization is so ultimately key when the time comes and you need something, you got to be able to find it.
So what are some of those hard questions that you two have had to ask?
One of them, I know Trent said, well, do you want to sell the farm? That was a hard question for me because I still have that attachment, but I also realize I'm getting older and we have to look at the next generation and what's going to happen. For me, it's a sentimental thing, but I also realize that it has to be operational and has to be viable. Because my main goal really is I want to see this continue as a functioning farm.
I wanted to ask, what advice would you have for others, because there are so many non-operating landowners out there that have similar situations.
When you got a family business, it doesn't matter if it's a farm or not, but there's really three things you have to kind of consider: is the ownership, who owns it and has an interest in it, who's managing it, who do you want to have control and who's got the capabilities, and then how's the income being split from that operation. And so business structures can be important in figuring out how to do that, and maybe utilizing a trust as well.
Steve and Michelle, thank you for the conversation, important conversations to have. And for more information, you can go to aginsightcenter.com.